Hello there, welcome to another brand new OET listening lesson. This is all about part B. We're going to be doing some top tips today and also doing some practice. Thank you very much to Selvie, one of our YouTube students who actually requested this. So I hope you find this useful, Selvie, and I hope the rest of you do too. So what are we going to do in this lesson? We're going to do a quick recap of listening part B. We're then going to look at some top tips and strategies of how you can answer the questions. Of course, we'll do some practice and then we'll take a look at the answers as well. Welcome back for those of you joining me again, and hello and welcome for those of you who are new. My name's Sona and I'm your online OET tutor with Bose Learning. I'm a premium preparation provider of the OET and I'm so happy that you've come to watch this and upgrade your OET with us. So let's get started then. And what happens in OET Listening Part B? Can you remember? Well, you're going to hear 6 short workplace audio extracts and you're going to get multiple choice questions. Each question has 3 options. Here's an example from the actual OET website. This is sample test 1. We're just going to have a quick look at this and then we're going to go on and do some practice with some brand new listening for you. But let's just have a look at this and see what the format is for listening part B. So what 3 parts make up each task then? Well, we have the first one, which gives you the background, the context. In this case, you hear a nurse briefing her colleague about a patient. I'll come back to this in a moment. Then you have the actual question. Again, more coming up about this, and then you have your 3 options. Okay, so those are the 3 parts. Now, let's look at your strategy. Why should you focus on the context? Well, the context is always going to be read to you, so you're going to actually hear this context being read out. It's useful for 2 reasons. First of all, it gives you the background. So you're going to hear a nurse briefing her colleague. So this is a nurse in a hospital ward or possibly a care home, but you already get an idea of the background here. The other good thing about looking at the context, paying attention to it, is that it tells you how many people you're going to hear. In this case, it's a colleague talking to another colleague about a patient, so you're going to hear 2 people. It could also be the case where you hear a healthcare professional talking to a patient, so again, you're going to hear 2 people. The other option is that you just hear one person talking, so you have a team leader giving a briefing to other people. So either you hear 2 people talking or just one person talking to a team, and the context will tell you all this. Now, part 2, the question focus. You're not going to hear this read, but they're going to tell you you now have time to look at the question and the options. You only need to look at one question at a time. Really focus on what the question is asking you. In this case, what does she warn her colleague about? This is the nurse, of course. So pay attention to this. There's a warning. You need to listen out for the warning. What's the warning? Question focus might be a question like this, or it might be an incomplete sentence. So it might be the beginning of a sentence and the options are the second half. You have to choose the best one. Then, once you've looked at the question itself, look at your options and try and select the keywords, but just be careful of these keywords. I'll tell you why in a moment, but do try and understand them. The patient is allergic to some types of antibiotics, so you can make notes or you can just underline allergic to antibiotics, only some kinds. So the patient is a fall risk, prevent the patient from falling, care must be taken, or oxygen can be provided if the patient becomes breathless. Look at all of these. Look again at the question. So really pay attention. You're listening for a warning. You've got your options, but just be careful because it's very likely that you're going to hear these key words in the context of the audio. So you're going to hear allergic, you're going to hear antibiotics. fall risk, oxygen, if breathless. You're going to hear all of these things, but you are listening out for this warning. Yeah, this warning. So really pay attention to what you're listening for, listen to it, and then pick out the best option. So even though you might hear the other options, you'll recognise that a warning is coming up because the nurse will say something like, the thing you need to be careful about is, or there's a risk that, or please be aware that, so you know that you need to take note of something, that this warning is coming up. So listen for that trigger and then select the best option. Okay, let's have a go then. So as I say, brand new listenings for you coming up. We'll do the first one together and then you can have a go at the other ones by yourself. I'll give you the answer to each one after we hear it. So first of all, you hear Jo explaining her role to a new team member. What is her job? So you're going to hear someone called Jo talking to someone new about Jo's job. What is her job? Is Jo a paediatric nurse helping children with therapy? So is she a nurse? Is she a play specialist who encourages children to play as part of their therapy or as a way to take their medication? So is she a specialist encouraging children, or is she a manager who specialises in how procedures are done? So we either have a nurse, a play specialist, or a manager. Just be careful, we have lots of ideas about therapy, so you're bound to hear that a couple of times. You're bound to hear procedures, but we want to know what Jo's job is. Okay, let's listen.
Hello, I'm Jo. I'm one of the play staff. I'm here to support nurses and provide children with activities, whether it be normalising play or any therapeutic play, to assist the nurses in getting medication and other procedures done.
And the answer, of course, is B. So she assists the nurse. She's not a nurse herself. She assists the nurse. She's a play specialist. She's assisting the nurses to carry out the procedures. She's not a manager who does this. She's the play specialist. You can go back and listen again if you need to. Just rewind to the timestamp, which I've put on for you. Okay, next one, all down to you now. See how you go. You hear part of a consultation between a GP and a patient with a severe headache. What has made the patient feel better?
So you said this headache started about 3 days ago?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was there anything that brought it on? Anything unusual that happened maybe 3 days ago?
Not really, no.
Okay. Can you tell me anything that makes it better?
Nothing's made it better.
Okay.
I took some Tylenol, I tried
Okay.
Motrin, nothing. I just try not to move too much.
All right. Is there anything that makes it worse?
Yeah,
Like
movement. And light.
Okay.
And it's just constant though. There's, it doesn't, it's just constant. It's all over.
Okay. So if you had to rate it on a pain scale, 0 being no pain, 10 being the worst pain you ever had.
Oh, it's a 10.
A 10?
I've never had a headache like this.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds really bad.
And the answer here is nothing. So the patient has taken medication, but it hasn't improved the condition. She's been trying to limit the movement she makes, but it doesn't actually make her feel better. It just stops things getting worse. So actually nothing has improved the condition. Number 3 coming up for you. You hear a nurse briefing her colleague about a patient called David Black. In the real exam, they'll then say, you now have time to read the question and the options. I'll read the question for you. What does she warn her colleague about?
In bed 2 then we have David Black, and David's an 82-year-old gentleman, and he's been with us for the last 2 weeks. He is a left-sided CVA with a right-sided weakness, and he is now fully immobile. He has a history of Parkinson's disease and ulcerative colitis. We have no EDD for him because the plan is for long-term care, and I think he is for discussion today at the placement forum. He was living with his wife prior to this admission, and they have one son who lives in Dublin. In relation to his ADLs, he is now requiring full care. He's a hoist transfer out into his OT chair, which he can tolerate for short periods. His Waterlow score is 18. He has a pressure relieving cushion and a pressure relieving mattress. His pressure areas are red and blanching. He has been seen by the SALT and he's for a modified diet which he's not tolerating at present. His urinary catheter is also draining very concentrated urine, so we need to up his fluid intake. His speech is very poor after his stroke. It appears like he's confused, but he's not. You just need to give him a bit of time. And at the moment, we're crushing his medications.
Again, everything is mentioned, isn't it? He's not getting confused. It looks as though he is because he's having problems communicating, but you just need to give him time and then he does communicate fine. There is a long-term care plan in place. In fact, they're going to be discussing that later. But the warning is to make sure his fluid levels need to be increased, need to be up, because of course his urine is coming out very concentrated. So that is the warning. Number 4, you hear a nurse briefing her colleague about a patient called Mary. The nurse explains that.
Okay, in Ward 1, Bed 1, we have Mary White. She's a 76-year-old lady and she was admitted on the 17th of the 9th under Dr. Maguire. She's been admitted with an exacerbation of COPD. She's a past medical history of ischemic heart disease, AFib and type 2 diabetes, peripheral vascular disease and peripheral neuropathy and bilateral leg ulcers. She's been treated with IV antibiotics, steroids and nebulizers, and today is day 3. She lives with her husband, who's an 85-year-old gentleman, and he has had a stroke in the past. They also have 2 sons who live nearby and call in daily. She still smokes. In relation to her ADLs, she requires assistance of 2. She is mobile with the Zimmer frame, but she does require supervision, and she can become very short of breath on exertion. And she's also a high falls risk. Her Waterlow is 15. Overnight, she slept for short periods. And for today, then, she needs to have a respiratory nurse review and a diabetic nurse review. Her leg dressings need to be done. She's for a repeat chest x-ray and we need to chase up the report on her sputum sample. We also need to monitor her fluid intake as she doesn't take enough fluids and adhere to a strict diabetic diet as she has a bit of a sweet tooth.
And this time the answer is A, so you just shade that in. The patient has a sweet tooth, the nurse says, so she likes her sweet things, so you have to make sure and monitor her diet, make sure she's not having all those sweets and chocolates, etc. The sputum sample hasn't arrived, that needs to be chased up. Yes, the patient's husband has had a stroke, but nothing about him being in hospital at the moment. Number 5, you hear the clinical lead of a hospital ward explaining why errors occur. He says that patients can be harmed if...
Patients don't come to the hospital between 9 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock at night. They're coming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the people that meet them in the front line tend to be the junior doctors, nurses and allied healthcare professionals. And so we needed a system to ensure that we were operating consistently across the 24 hours period. Failure in handover has been recognised as a major preventable cause of patient harm, and it's principally due to human factors of poor communication, and these lead to systemic errors in patient care.
And the answer here is B. So there's nothing about staff being tired at night, it's just that patients come in at night, patients have to be treated at night time. They are met by junior doctors and FH1s. It's not that they're too junior to deal with it, it's just that's what happens. But the problems occur and patients can actually be harmed if staff have poor communication skills. And question 6, you hear the clinical lead of a hospital ward explaining what the tool S-bar is. He says that S-bar
is an easy to remember, simple tool which formalises the sort of information that need to be drawn to the attention of a doctor. It's a very simple tool which allows people to communicate effectively in high-risk environments. It was developed by the military and it was taken on by the Americans, Kaiser Permanente, and they noticed a 50% drop in patient errors when they implemented S-bar. So we're hoping to replicate that here in Oxford.
And the answer is C. So it's not too formal, it just is a formal way of doing handover notes. It's actually a very useful tool. It's not complicated to organise, but it works really well. In fact, it's good in high risk environments. It was developed during wartime by the US Army. So the answer is option C. So I hope you found that useful. If you did, I'd be so happy if you could share this with a friend or a colleague and help this channel to grow. Why not join us on our Telegram group or sign up for our free newsletter of all things OET. If you'd like some information about my on-demand courses, I've also put in some discount codes for you below. Thanks very much for watching. Take care and see you next time. Bye bye.